My name is Jessie Houghton. I am a product manager on the Visual Studio team, and my team focuses on making sure that the version control experience and the Git tooling is exactly how you need it to be productive and successful. And that includes all of the integration that you get with GitHub and Azure DevOps. So every time where you're jumping back and forth between your IDE and your work items or your issues, taking a look at that backlog and trying to understand and prioritize, that's everything that my team focuses on. So to get into it, I'm sure you've seen this session survey page a ton. Super important. I think if you don't fill it all the way out, you don't get your t-shirt. So make sure you fill that out. And then we've got lots of session objectives today that you've probably already know about. And that's like the extent of my slides. I'll have like a little review at the end, but it's mostly going to be demo. And before I get into the demo, I wanted to set the scene by telling you all a story. So a couple months ago, I woke up and I got out of my bedroom and I go to like leave for my day, and the hallway is pitch black. Overnight, we had lost power. There was some issue with the dam that like delivers the power to the Seattle area. And so I am just like faced with this dark hallway in one direction. There's not even any emergency lights or anything. So it's really just like I'm in the dark. And I had a lot of plans to do that day. It was like over the weekend, and I had planned to go get my bike repaired, and I was going to meet up with some friends later that day. So I had like 3 tote bags in one arm, and I had my bike in the other hand, and I was trying to wheel my bike down the hallways in my apartment building. And I only had like this small little spotlight from my phone camera to kind of help me navigate where I was going. Now I live there, right? So I've got like a good, a decent mental picture of what's going on and how to get where I need to go. But I really had to rely on that little spot of light when I was trying to do things like, lock my door once I got out of the apartment, trying to navigate down 5 flights of stairs because I couldn't take the elevator. And my neighbors were running into me because I only saw like their little spot of light coming over the corner. And then I get to the basement of the building, and it's a 2-floor car garage in the basement. And I don't know if you've ever been in a garage when the lights are all off, but it's kind of scary. Like I didn't, I knew what it looks like with the lights on, but in the dark, I really could only rely on my little pinprick of light there. And the reason why I tell you this is because a lot of the time when you're working with Git in the command line, you've got this good mental picture. You know where you live. This is your home repository, and you know how your branches are. But you got to rely on that little pinprick of light, that little Git status that you're running every now and then again to make sure you don't make any mistakes, you don't run into anybody. So I just thought that it might be a good way to set the scene. And now you can be super successful using the command line for your everyday tasks. Let's say I was just trying to walk out the door. I could do that probably with my eyes closed. I didn't even need my flashlight to help me with that. But when you're in these more complex scenarios, you're holding like 2 or 3 tote bags in one arm, or maybe you need to revert a commit that occurred like way back in your history. Maybe you get some bug that comes in and you have to do some history searching. That's when having the lights turned on, having Visual Studio to help you navigate through those Git difficulties can be really helpful. So let me jump into it from there. And I wanted to start off with a little bit of a splash. So this is not available yet, but in the next version of Visual Studio coming out next week, you'll be able to access multiple GitHub accounts. You'll have multiple GitHub accounts logged in at the same time. So if you're a contractor and you're somebody that has to deal with multiple accounts trying to get through and get access to everything you need, you no longer have to log out and then go through the whole web process again to log back in. Now it's just 2 or 3 accounts, and we actually help remember which account belongs to which repo so that when you switch between repos, you don't have to worry about committing with the wrong ID. You've got all of your account and access all set up and ready for you. So yeah, I knew a lot of people were waiting for that one, so I just wanted to get it out of the way. That'll be available next week. It's in preview. So definitely give that a try. Jumping into stuff that is all available today, I'm in Visual Studio 1710 preview right now. So everything that you should see here is going to be available already. I'm just going to kick off with my regular inner loop workflow. I've made some changes to these two files, and I'm going to double click in my Git Changes window. If you're not familiar, the Git Changes window is kind of your home base for everything that you're doing day to day. I like to keep it docked on the side here, right along with Solution Explorer. I know some folks that like to have, Solution Explorer like a little bit on top and then their Git changes below, because it's a really nice way to like quickly see what's going on, like what changes have been made. And when I double click on that, I get put into this diff view. And this is showing me the difference between my current working tree and the previous commit. Now, there are a couple benefits of taking a look at this view. One of them is that I get to drill in and make sure that I'm committing everything that I mean to commit. And what I mean by that is sometimes you've got, stray comments, you've got maybe even a secret key that you've used to test something locally, but you don't want to commit that. You don't want that to get into your history. So one way that I like to avoid that is by using the line staging. So you even saw that really quick. When I highlight over any changed line, I can use the stage line feature, and that allows me to make sure that I'm only staging the specific pieces of my code that I mean to. Now, I'm going to actually switch from side-by-side to inline mode, because that's a little bit easier to interpret in a presentation environment. But I know a lot of folks like those nice diff features that they can change if they're in side-by-side or inline. And then the other thing you might notice that's already enabled here for me is the summary diff view. And that's going to make it way easier for me to kind of scroll through my changes. And I don't have to be bothered by looking at all of the code that doesn't have any changes in it, right? It just hides it away. And if I need that extra context, I can click on it, and then I can open up and get a little bit of extra lines to get my context filled in. Now, let me actually open a file that has more than one change. There we go. So here I see that like system was added, and if this was like a real life use case, having system added there is a good indicator that maybe I added something later that required that system library to be added. And this is a good mental check. Like, did I mean to do that? Is that something that I wanted to be added here? And in this case, I do want to stage that line. I'll go ahead and stage this one as well. This one is just a stray console.write that I actually didn't want in there. So I'll just go ahead and quickly undo that. And then I'll save that file. And as you're noticing there, when I stage them, they actually disappear from view, so I don't have to worry about it again. Where they're going is into the stage changes view. So I can always go back in there and I'll get the same kind of diff view, and I can unstage anything that I might have staged by accident. So let's finish this up. I'll stage those changes. And we already reviewed my other file and know that that one's good to go. So now I'm all staged and ready to write my commit message. I'm sure some of you have seen this already, but I always like to get a first draft of my commit message from Copilot. So Copilot is going to look at my diffs, and it's going to calculate and write up for me a quick title and a very detailed description of all the changes that I incorporated in that file. And that's just going to make it way easier for me to write more descriptive commit messages than, oh, fix number one, or like, it works now, or sometimes I get frustrated and I'm just like keyboard smashing like, because it's not working. This is at least going to give my coworkers and my future self a little bit of a benefit when I need to go back into that history and resolve items later. So I always like to take a look at that first draft, and it looks good to me. And I also want to reference a work item here. So I'll go ahead and use the closes keyword. That's a super nice thing that if you have it enabled in your repo, then when this commit gets added in my pull request, it's actually going to automatically close that issue for me, so I don't have to go back and remember to do that. So I'm going to use the work item search by typing hash here, and then I can even narrow down the different issues that are coming up by just typing, and that's going to search and narrow down in that list, so I can make sure that I'm adding the work item that I mean to. All right, I'm all set to commit. And one thing I'll just mention here instead of demoing is that we heard from some folks that when they're building that some of their Git actions are actually paused. And we did that for a reason, because we don't want to accidentally add to version control any temporary files or anything that gets added during the build. But it was a blocker for some folks. And so what we allowed you to do is you can actually commit your stage changes during a build, because that allows you to have more control and make sure that you're not committing anything you didn't mean to. Alrighty, I'm ready to commit. And I just did all of that work, and I'm realizing that I committed it to the wrong branch. I don't know if that's happened to anybody, but it can be a pain to recover from that situation. So what I'm going to show you really quick here is how to get back to where you want to be. What I'll do is I'll go in, I'll look at my message, and I don't want to lose this message because Copilot spent a lot of time crafting it for me really carefully. So I'll go ahead and copy that to my keyboard. And then I'll go ahead and right click on the commit before and say that I just want to reset my branch and keep the changes. Now, the reason why I did it like this is because that's going to put those changes back into my working tree. And a really nice thing that Visual Studio does for me is that if I want to go ahead and actually create my new branch with the name that I should have used, let's say a really descriptive create pull request version 2 was the one that I wanted instead. When I click create, I actually get this dialog that says, hey, you have some uncommitted files. Do you want to bring those over to this new branch? I'm like, yes, of course I want to do that. It actually gives me another little heads up if I'm going to expect any conflicts on checking out that branch. Or it gives me these other options to stash those changes in case I was switching contexts and I want to go back and apply those later. So this is the option that I want, and I would go ahead and continue checkout, and then I would get those changes onto the correct branch that I was looking for. And in this case, I created a new branch, but if you wanted to move maybe you accidentally committed to your development branch and you didn't mean to commit to that directly, well, you can actually go and move it to the working tree or the feature branch that you meant to do it on, and you don't have to create a new branch to do that. Okay, now I just did that handy feature work inside of the Git repository window. So this is going to be your home base if you're ever doing anything having to do with history, moving things around branches, taking a look at your commits. And we just did some work in this branch, and we're ready to compare that to our development branch. Let's say I'm getting ready to create a pull request, and I want to see how that's kind of stacking up. So right now, I can only see create pull request v1. That's my current branch. And then let's visualize that against my development branch. So we are using the multi-branch graph here. You can actually see these in 2 different colors. And that's going to allow me to get a really good visual picture of what are the differences in these 2 branches, which commits exist on which branch. Another really handy thing that you can do with the multi-branch graph, and I'll go ahead and turn off the development branch here, is I'll visualize this bug fix branch. And let's say that you needed to get a commit that was on a bug fix branch so that you could continue working on your feature branch while including the changes that were in that. Now, if you're a Git expert, you probably already know the command for cherry pick. But if you're anything like me, every time I need a cherry pick from the command line, I am stuck on Stack Overflow for like an hour trying to make sure that I type in the thing right and make sure that I get the right hash, and so I'm not accidentally making a mistake and messing up my Git history. But now, since I have the create pull request v1 branch checked out, I can verify that because it's bolded here on the left. I'm visualizing that against my bug fix branch. I can just right click on this one, and then I can cherry pick, and that's going to move that commit from that branch up onto my branch. And I can visualize and just doubly confirm that I did the right action, I cherry picked the right thing. So that just makes cherry picking really handy and easy for me because I've got the lights on. I'm able to visualize everything that's happening, and I don't have to focus on that little bit of light that I can see when I just run git status. All right, what was one thing here that I wanted to do before I actually created my pull request? I don't know if you saw, but it looks like I have a problematic secret that's in my commit. And it looks like I already pushed this up to my remote branch. But when I'm trying to do cleanup and make sure that I don't have any secrets or any hashes or anything left in my history, I want to clean that up both on my local and on my remote. So I'm going to show you an easy way to do that if that secret is close to the top of your history. So let's go ahead and create a new branch starting from the commit that's right before the problematic one. And we'll say that this is demos build 2024. And then we'll just call this the safe branch because it's the one that's not going to contain the secret. And I don't want these changes that I have in my working tree. So I'll go ahead and turn off that bug fix branch. And I'll turn on create pull request view one. And now I want all of the commits that are on my create pull request branch to get moved over to my safe branch, except for my problematic secret. So I'm just going to do that series of tasks that I just did before, and I'll just cherry pick those commits one at a time from my create pull request view one. So I got the enhanced title and I just need the fix here. And now I have all of the commits that I need on this safe branch, and I'm safe to delete my create pull request view one branch from my local. Once I delete that from my local machine, I'm then safe to go ahead and delete that on the web. So I don't have any of those credentials or problematic secrets hanging around in my Git history. So this is really handy if you're ever in that situation. Okay, we've done a lot of talking before getting to kind of the end of that inner loop. So let's go ahead and look at my safe branch here. And then compare that to develop. Make sure I'm all ready to create my pull request. And I think, yep, develop is down here. And I'll go ahead and push those changes on safe branch. Now, before in Visual Studio, this little notification only had one option. It was to create in browser. And what's annoying about that, for me at least, was that when I moved from Visual Studio to the browser, I'm super vulnerable to getting easily distracted. I can get into an email thread. I can look at, what else is on my plate. And it's just hard when I want to stay focused in my development environment to keep the blinders on when I have to move and switch contexts. So what we enabled here is the ability to create a pull request within Visual Studio. And so it kind of looks like how your interface looks like on Azure DevOps or GitHub. And we have a lot of the same features that are enabled in here. So I'll go ahead and change this to inline. It's a little bit easier to see. I'm using that great summary diff mode to easily kind of go through my changes, and I can double click on them if I want a full screen version. Let me go back to my pull request. You can probably see here in my little description box that I've got a markdown preview, so I can take a look at that. And that was auto-populated with my template that I already have set up for this repository. And then I can add my title. If I didn't have a template here, I could do the same thing that we did earlier using Copilot to generate a first draft of my pull request description. And that's going to have a format that is really easy to work with. It gives you a bit of a summary, and then it gives you some bullet points. So it's a nice one to have when you just want to get a good sanity check that you're including all the changes that you want to, and you're describing them effectively for your coworkers. I can do those referencing of work items and issues as well. I can create this as a draft. And then once I'm all ready to go and I've reviewed all my changes, I can add my reviewers as well. So it's got almost everything that you need to complete those easy pull request creations inside of VS without having to move to the browser. All right. What else did I want to show here? One thing I want to mention is that this template, the ability to have your default template auto-populate there, is only available in 17.10 preview and then in 17.11 preview. So it's The feature flag for that is only available in preview, and it won't be in the GA channel next week. So just keep that in mind if you want the templates. Alrighty. So let's say I have a pull request that I've been working on for a little bit, and my colleagues have left me some comments on it. Now let's get out of this windows. And when I'm ready to address comments from my colleagues, I pull up Azure DevOps or GitHub on one screen, and then on my machine, I have my Visual Studio running, and then I'm looking at the line number, like the file name and the line number, and I'm like looking back and forth to like make sure that I'm catching all the comments, and then I'm updating them. But like when I update them in the web, I like write a message, but it's not up to date yet because I haven't pushed it from my machine. And so there's like this disconnect, right, between where I'm trying to get that feedback and apply it, and then from my actual machine. So what we did is, in this case, if you have an active pull request on a branch, you'll get a notification that says, hey, we noticed you have an active pull request. Let's go ahead and show the comments from that pull request in my file, in my live file here. So now I can scroll through and I have all of those comments available to me. I see a little attention dot, so I can even get a visual reminder of when new comments are coming in. I can address all of these, and I'll use a little editor magic here, the auto surround. So that was just highlighting and then clicking the quote, and it just works. I can say, all right, all fixed here, and then I can reply and resolve my comments. I can navigate from one to the next one. I've got this little toolbar up here that allows me to just navigate the files that are part of my pull request. And this is what's available now in preview, and will be in the GA channel next week, but we're still working on this, and we want to make this even better for reviewers. So we want to make it so that you can add your comments, you can see the diff view, you can get everything that you need to leverage all of the power of VS, all of the awesome navigation ability, all the ability to run your local tests and everything for the reviewer side as well. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you're voting on that comment in developer community, because we are definitely looking and prioritizing things related to that right now. Oh, I'm realizing that I'm over time. All right. That was the last thing that I wanted to show. Let me jump back to the slides so you can see your survey here. And we just covered a whole bunch of stuff in 20 minutes. If you want to take a screenshot, feel free. Yeah, little note, 1712 preview features are including that multiple GitHub accounts. We want to make sure that that works really well in preview so that when it hits the GA channel, it's in a good state. So please try that out. I heard a lot of you guys were excited about that multi-GitHub account. So we want to make sure that it's ready to go. So try that out, let us know. And then any more resources if you want to keep up with the latest features. If you want to review any of those common Git failure scenarios, I also cover a few more in that playlist on YouTube. I don't want to cut off anybody who's taking a photo. And I think these slides are available on the website as well. And then that beautiful session survey. Thank you so much for your time.